Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are podcasts. You can pick them up at ArtistFirst.com. We welcome your email questions and comments to DJ at ArtistFirst.com. Now here they are, Michael and Margaret Lines.
Thank you very much, T-Man. And I am detached. It's been a hell of a weekend.
Yeah, it's been hectic.
And I'm Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
And tonight's high-energy show, The Everyman, will be made possible by some Nembutal. Does that make sense? Nope. Good. Moving on. Anyway. All right, let's get together. Hi. It's been a heck of a day.
Yeah, it has.
It has. But anyway, we are going to remain, as our topic tonight is going to expound upon, we're going to remain engaged yet detached. And that's sort of an oxymoron when you state it that way, because attachment, and if we kind of back up a little bit, let's not go into this too quickly. If we talk about Buddhism, Buddhism in general is the removal of attachments, of encumbrances. And these encumbrances, in many ways, are the things of the world. Christ also said, be in the world, but not of the world.
Right.
And these are it's a very similar philosophy. The Buddhists seek, through various techniques, to detach themselves from, the cycle of samsara, the cycle of suffering, the cycle, the attachments within this world, which are the source of much of the suffering of the world. And then the mental attachments, which can be the source of your own personal, sort of generation of your own personal suffering. So attachment is seen as something that you want to control, or at least be able to expunge from your life. So the law of detachment, which is what we're going to talk about this evening, is sort of a corollary to that. The idea of detachment, though, sounds sort of, like, well, I'm going to be a recluse, I'm going to be a hermit, I'm going to live in the mountains. And certainly there are many gurus or enlightened ones who choose that path. But who was it that we were listening to that said the greatest form of this art of detachment, is to live fully in the world? In other words, you start off and they take you to the monastery and they put you in solitary and they feed you bread and water, and you learn to detach. You learn to de-stress. But then if you go into the world and you immediately gather back all your attachments again, you haven't really learned the lesson. In fact, the idea is to so well insulate, the wrong word, but inculcate yourself to detachment, that then you can go back, be fully, and appear to be fully engaged in the world, but yet understand that you are not of the world. You are in the world, you're not of the world. You are, for all intents and purposes, as effective, if not more so, as engaged as you ever were, if not more so. But yet, you have the detachment. From what, you ask? And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. What are you actually detaching yourself from? The initial thrust is to detach yourself from all physical things, from the needs of the body, from all these other things which seem to be what you're trying to do. You get there and say, I've done all this thing. And yet, the true attachments are still there, waiting to just hook right back in again if you go back into the world. It's when you understand that it's not the detachment of things or of objects or even of concepts, but it's the detachment itself. It's to become one with consciousness, which is not attached, which is where you end up being able to do anything you bloody well want, and yet remain detached.
That is a description of your life lesson down here. The previous show we were talking about the drive to identify oneself, and what you identify with will set the tone and the pace of the world that you are creating around you. What you take from the outside and sculpt or use it to begin to form the world that you are interacting with. And it's very interesting because what it is that you interact with, you place directly in within the creation of your world. And I say your world because your mind will take a similar situation or impulse that other people have had and interpret it your particular way. And in that interpretation, you are creating a form that you have chosen to interact with. And that is the foundation of attachment. Understanding it is that interpretation that you have done. The perception was yours, but the world itself is still playing out as it will. So what is your interpretation? You see it, and that becomes the attachment. Now, not all attachment can be termed good or bad. It just is. And if you can pull away from judging that, okay, attachments are bad and detachment is good, that's the mental problem that many Buddhist followers, especially when they start, have a problem with. Because
they're attached to detachment.
they lock themselves in to a mindset. And what you're actually detaching from is your mindset that you're functioning at, because you want to get to the purity of consciousness and who you truly are, as opposed to who you think you are.
Which was our previous show. Before you, that's so compact, and I think we need to unpack it more, because what you just said was very profound. The attachment is not the world, and the attachment isn't your perception of the world. Those two things are neither attached nor detached. They just are. You are the observer, which means you do what? You observe. You have to perceive. You can't just close your eyes and shut down. That's not detachment either. The world is the world. It is a world within you because you perceive the world. You have to do that. That's part of consciousness, perceiving the world, being the observer. Attachment, you said it, and you nailed it. Attachment is your interpretation, your judgment, your identification, your ability to define a piece of you as you in the world, of the world. I am a potted plant. To do a silly, but I am, whatever I am is your interpretation. It's you. It's what the Buddhists say, grasping onto the world. You're putting your fingers on the world. You're putting your mental tentacles You're grasping, you're attaching
Mm-hmm.
through interpretation of how your perception identifies you, grabs a piece of you. The interesting thing about attachments is people say be detached from the world. No. You have to be detached from you. You're grabbing yourself, as fun as that sounds. You're grabbing yourself. The attachment is you attaching to you, a piece of you attaching to a piece of you that you're calling the world. I am a potted plant. You're attaching yourself to yourself as a potted plant. And that's what Margaret said. It's so incredibly profound. It's your interpretation. That word is the root of attachment.
Right. And that's why detachment is a great conversation.
Mm.
So understanding that it is that connection with you yourself and the outside world and the attachment that you form, because nothing else will form this attachment. You have to actually give permission for this to come into existence. And when it comes into existence, it's all you. It's all your creation. And acknowledging that and understanding that since you've made it, you can unmake it as well as remake it. That is what it means to be a creator of your world.
Mm.
So if you can move into that, allow yourself the acknowledgement that I've been doing this. This is how I've created my world. You as the observer can begin to observe your attachment to the world. Diagnose it, if you would. Find out what it is that makes that attachment large or small, close or far. If there's a frequency of an emotion running through it, or is it foundation to a thought form? Judgment is always part of the mix.
It's just as you said, the beginning of this philosophical journey, you started to say, well, attachment is bad. This in and of itself is okay, but it is really the very basic beginning, because you're still judging. You're still attaching yourself to a judgment about your attachments. The phase that Margaret's talking about, when you begin to understand that you are the observer, Tolle's words, you are the consciousness, you are able to observe what you've done to the world that is you. The observer observes the ego. The observer observes the emotions. The observer can see the attachments. The observer is between the thoughts. So now you're there. You, the true you, is able to say, this part of me which I have balled up into this form, this thought form, this emotion form, this energy form, this entity, is what I wish to undo. And when you undo that, let's say you attach yourself to being, a PhD of macroeconomics, to name something incredibly boring, and you identified, you attached many things, your pride, your self-esteem, your sense of worth, all these things were attached to this. And you worked at it very hard, and it took a long time to become this incredibly boring person. So there you are. And now you said, this is empty. I've come to the end of this. I wish to relieve the suffering of this, because I understand that it's not satisfying. And you begin to understand that this part of you that you have bound up into this thing you call the PhD of macroeconomics can be observed. You can sit back and do a life review in essence. Where does the life review come from? It comes from the consciousness, looking back trans-time, looking across all attachments. You start to say to yourself and say, this entity, this energetic form, these attachments have a boundary. There's things which are outside of them. There are things which are then outside of all those things. You bring yourself further and further up until you can start to see that this is too small, that this is too limiting, that this is not you. And you start to do what Margaret said. You start to unform this. You start to say, suppose I had never been a boring professor of macroeconomics. Would I still be a consciousness? Yes. So you make it as though it had never been. I don't define myself as this thing. I'm greater. I'm faster. I am willing to be in an uncertain, undefined, observing state. To then, from that uncertain, unrealized, undefined state, say, this is not me. Yes, I can do all these things. I have those concepts within me. I have those abilities. But they're not me. I am not those things. I have those things. I feel, as you said the other day, I feel afraid. I am not afraid. I am not afraid. I feel afraid. I am not a boring professor of macroeconomics. I'm so much more.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are. That's detachment. And it's the true wisdom of it is you can also say, I am not the guru of gurus.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's attachment too.
Some people are attached to path that they have chosen. And that's one example of it. Someone had chosen the path of finance, let's say. Some people say, well, I'm on the spiritual path. And you're like, okay, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Are you happy there? Are you living there? And then the question arises of the definition of you and happy and there. It is interesting because any kind of vehement response is leaning more towards an ego response as opposed to acknowledging that you are. And deep joy comes from being in the moment. Deep joy. It has no words. And it's not something that you can fake. When you are on the path that is meant for you to walk, you can feel this incredible peace that rolls through you as well as out from you. And perhaps that's the best indicator for a person is, am I at peace in this moment? And it has nothing to do with what's going on around you. It's whether or not you contain the peace within, regardless of the madness outside.
That's exactly the same. Back to the same thing. Once you have cultivated detachment, you even understand that the path in and of itself is just another thing to be observed. You can then re-enter fully into what people call the world, and it will not sorry, not will not. It's your world, and as such, you contain it. It doesn't contain you. The law of detachment says you contain the world, and you contain the uncertainty of the future. You contain the ability to be comfortable with a undefinable outcome. And what I mean to say is when you identify yourself with anything, when you attach yourself to anything, you therefore look to, in some ways, control it. You attach yourself to things because you feel that now it is me and I can control me. You have an expectation for you. It's going to do this. It's going to be that. I'm going to be happy with it. I'm going to be unhappy if this happens. All these things are attachments. Once you understand that, when you get outside of that, you get outside of the of that sphere of even liking and disliking, happiness and unhappiness, and understand that it's the uncertainty, the undefinability of the next moment that you then embrace and live in, the now as it is, the world as it is, then you can do anything. You can do anything because you're not attaching yourself to the result of the doing. You're not attaching yourself to the identity of the doing. If I do this, I'll be this. If I do that, I'll be this. No. You're just doing because it needs to be done. You observe, as you said before, Margaret, you observe the world. You are in the world. You're not of the world, yet you have a role to play in the world. Something comes into your sphere, into your consciousness. It has an exigency, an immediacy. You accept it, and then you say, is there something I can do, I wish to do, I want to do? But none of it is attachment. Because you can also be just as happy with doing nothing.
True. The control of something is interesting because we want to be able to influence our world, and that's a basic drive, wish for understanding. But I think you have to watch your language when you speak because it's so easy to fall back into that pattern of confusing what is happening in the world and your identity. For instance, whenever you're, say, in a game and you win that game, you want to say, well, I'm a winner. And then that plays out through whatever you're doing. So if you're at a task and you haven't completed it, or you came out on the short end of the stick, so suddenly I'm a loser. Again, that begins to play out because you've accepted that role of being a loser or a winner instead of saying, I won a game, I lost a game. So understanding that links up very intimately in your head with your identity. It is not the I who observes that experiences winning or experiences losing, you are saying, I am a winner or I am a loser. And it is to be in that state of observation, to observe the speech patterning that you are using, to understand that what you are actually placing inside of you as your identity. Because if you say, I've lost, I am a loser, you place that inside of you, and suddenly your whole energy shift happens. And you begin to vibrate at a very low level, and that's when you begin to call in all the other things that can come in and beat on you, because you've identified as a loser. Or the converse, I am a winner. Everybody tells you, you have to be in that winning mindset, and instead of the observation of, I have won this game. Being in that winning mindset is akin to, you can be overly positive. Have you ever met someone who is so positive they actually are toxic?
Pollyanna.
Well, toxic positivity, that's the newest thing going around lately. That's what I'm seeing.
It's another topic. But I don't want to go too fast past that, because that's so incredibly powerful. Again, very profound. If you are in the world and you're doing things, you are going to win and you are going to lose, or you're going to get an outcome which those around you will say is desirable, and there's an outcome which those around you say is less desirable. So this is an observation. This is a more desirable outcome. I would rather have a well-cooked pizza pie than cold potato soup. And I've done the things, and I have a well-cooked pizza pie and not cold potato soup. This is an outcome which you say, I like this one better than that one. Again, this is all fine. Something which is more pleasant, something which is more nutritious, whatever it may be. Similarly, you can do something which results in a less desirable outcome. Okay. Unless you do nothing whatsoever, as you flow, the world changes around you, your actions have consequences. We're not talking about, sitting on a mountaintop with your fingers crossed all day long. You're in the world. Why are you not getting attached is because the outcome of an action, or the random chance which the world hands to you every blessed instant of every day, random chance, something happens. All these things do not affect your identity of who you are. What Margaret just said. I'm not someone who now is offended and angry because I got cold potato soup, and everyone knows I hate that, and they're trying to get me, and I know why this one tried to do that, and this. Once you spin off into that, you're not only attached, but you're completely distracted. You're not even conscious anymore. If you begin with the idea that I'm hungry, food is here. It's cold potato soup. Is there any other food? No. I'm hungry. I'll have the cold potato soup. Not what I wanted. Or I won't eat because I don't want it. But as long as it becomes nothing more than something which happened, an exigent reality of which you are the observer, and you go to the next moment of now, somebody swoops in and gives you a hot pizza, and you go, that's what I wanted. Great. The temptation is to identify that suddenly the ego is terribly offended that how could you think that I could possibly want cold potato soup, and you must be a dastardly person who needs to be expunged from society, and I'm going to set up a crusade to make sure that no one ever gets cold potato soup ever. And all of a sudden, who are you? You're completely detached. You're completely attached. You're completely consumed. You are now living in a fantasy, delusional, we talked about that the other day, a delusional world of which you are the crusader against potato soup for the rest of your life. You know, you might as well be a professor of macroeconomics. It's very, but you eschew all that. You just say, cold potato soup is here. Not particularly a fan. I don't think I'm going to eat this. The marker just waved a phone and said to me, we're at the end of the half an hour. The end of the half hour is here. I'm not particularly a fan, but we're going to go back to the studio, have cold potato soup, and we're going to come back on the other side and talk about the law of detachment. That's a great segue.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
Moonstones and murder. Real murderers need a heart of stone. Meet Maggie and Mike Heartstone, parents of twin boys, entrepreneurs, and now empty nesters. Mike is retired, not by choice, from his position as chief of police in the picturesque resort town of Hamilton. And now his wife Maggie and her shop, the Cozy Crystal, are their only source of income. When a mysterious killing interrupts Hamilton's famous Springfield Park rock show, the townsfolk, the Cozy Crystal, and their lives are rocked to the core. Can Mike and Maggie figure out who is behind the murderous deeds before the town comes crashing down around them? A touch of romance, a little mayhem, and a whole lot of suspense, along with plenty of comedy and thrills galore. Get your crystal magnifying glass out. It's time for some moonstones and murder. Available on Amazon, Apple, Kobo, and other fine e-tailers in ebook and paperback. Out soon on Audible. Get your copy today.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief Dev is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
Hello, this is Highway 59 recording artist Randy Moore, and you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Brag Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lynes is book 1 of the adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
Hi, this is Amanda Gray. Check out my new book, Glimpses of Grace in Georgia, available on Westbow Press Bookstore, Barnes & Noble, and Amazon. More information can be found at my website, www.glimpsesofgraceingeorgia.com, and you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network.
Thanks for joining us on The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lynes.
Thank you very much, Z-Man. And yes, we are recovering from the weekend. But tonight we're talking about the law of detachment. But you know what, Margaret, we haven't done is we have not read, and this is a quote by Deepak Chopra, who's a very, very famous philosopher and writer. So maybe you want to essay the quote.
Okay. The law of detachment. In detachment lies the wisdom of uncertainty. In the wisdom of uncertainty lies the freedom from our past, from the known, which is the prison of past conditioning. And in our willingness to step into the unknown, the field of all possibilities, we surrender ourselves to the creative mind that orchestrates the dance of the universe.
Mm. And I like this in many ways. It's a nice, complex statement, but I think the wisdom of uncertainty is another one of these sort of, people would say, well, how can that be? It's sort of an oxymoron. It's like, jumbo shrimp. Because wisdom, I think in the conventional sense, people think of it as being of knowing everything, of knowing a topic so intimately, of being able to choose and decide and never be wrong because you're wise. And the wisdom of uncertainty sounds like, how can you get wisdom from uncertainty? I think what Deepak is trying to say here, though, is that the wisdom lies in the truly wise don't see all outcomes. The truly wise don't bother with outcomes. Outcomes are not to be expected. They're not to be cultivated. They're not to be controlled. Uncertainty is by its very nature uncontrollable. And the wisdom is to embrace that.
Right. The uncertainty that life is the only certainty you ever have here. People, they want to have concrete, controllable situations. And in other words, they want a world that they're living in that is controllable and certain.
Right, and to the extent that you acknowledge uncertainty, people get annoyed at you. They get mad at you. Well, then you're just not studying it enough. And how can you give up like that? And how can you, because it scares people who are looking for certainty to admit that there is, and this is the big thing that really people stumble over, that there is nothing you can do to guarantee your next heartbeat.
Oh no, you can't. You can't talk to people about that.
Exactly.
No. You just have to assume. And that statement was given to me by a mother who wanted to give me advice about not worrying or being concerned about a sick child. You just have to assume that they'll be home. I looked at her like, I can't do that.
Right.
She could not fathom that there could be a situation where you just can't do that.
And yet, really, not couldn't fathom, they're trying to wrap her identity around uncertainty was so terrifying.
Mm-hmm. That it can't be my thought. It's got to be your thought. You must be doing something wrong. You just have to do this.
Right.
And at that point, I just remember looking at her going, may God bless you that you'll never go through a situation where uncertainty is your constant companion.
And really all you have. One thing suffering does, one thing the situation, and Christopher's situation did for us, is it breaks you from this, and Chopra says it very beautifully here, the prison of past conditioning. You know, the past they say is a guide for the present, for the future. It is, but it's so easy to identify and say, well, if it happened this way the last 17 times, then the 18th time it has to do the same thing. So now I know, I am wise, I understand. Now, I've read all the books. The prison of past conditioning is driven by fear. The past is, an interesting thing about it, Margaret, is people fear the past, which is silly. The past has happened. The past is powerless except through your own energizing the past and bringing it into the present. The past is powerless to affect the present. The prison of past conditioning, however, is you identifying with what happened in the past and bringing it into the present moment and trying to force it into the now and trying to force it into the future. This happened in the past, and so it has to happen now because I've found everything, and if I haven't found it, it's all about I wanting to control uncertainty. And some people do it with the past. Some people do it with all this, assumptions, and you can't have negative thoughts, and you have to do all the right things and have the insurances and all. So I've got everything under control. And to the extent that you don't have it under control, it's your fault for not having it yet more under control.
Well, you're having these negative feelings because you're not thinking positive. You have to think positive. And you sit and you're like, okay, do you even know what thinking is?
What Chopra says here, in our willingness to step into the unknown, and what is that but a leap of faith? A step into blind darkness is what we all do every moment of every day. Every moment of now is a step into blind darkness, which should and is, if you realize it to that extent, both wonderful and incredibly terrifying, if you allow it to be either wonderful or terrifying, or just be there. You will be in this moment. The moment can never be taken away from you. The next moment is completely, totally uncertain. To the extent that it resembles the prior moments is merely by, in some ways, pure chance. And to understand that at a being level is really the path to wisdom. To understand that the attachment to outcome is the basic attachment from which all other attachments kind of fan out from. Wanting something to be which has not yet been, and identifying with the wanting is the basic attachment. Getting into this, understanding that none of that matters, and what you really have to identify with is just being in the now, is stepping into the unknown, surrendering ourself, surrendering yourself, your ego, your emotions, your outcomes, your likes, your dislikes, that selves, to the creative mind, to consciousness.
The willingness. You understand, willing, to be willing. Because you've got to choose in every moment where your next step is going to be. And the willingness, if you understand that there's a lot of willingness that is influenced by unspoken fear. And fear becomes the overriding factor. It's like the fear of, well, I want to do it right. So let me get all this information, and this is the percentage of how this is supposed to go. 90% here, 10% there. So I'm choosing the 90 because that's what it says. But you look at that and you realize that who said that you were actually in the 90%? You're choosing based on what you're seeing, but in that moment, it's you, not the thousands of other iterations that gave you this percentage. This is you in this moment and how the outcome may play out. And they're saying 90% this way, 1% that way. So 10 people, 9 go this way, 1 go that way. Who are you in that mix? You may choose based on that, but doesn't guarantee anything.
The wonderful, succinct phrase that the Chinese restaurant owner said to us many, many years ago now: if it's you, it's you.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not you, it's not you. And both sides of that are important. Because people say, well, it's me. It's good. I'm going to be the one. I'm going to be the winner, not the loser. No. Because as Margaret just said, the past is no guarantee of the present or of the moment of now. So you can't choose and say, well, 9 out of 10 dentists say, 9 out of 10 macroeconomics say, whatever those are,
Economists,
those guys say that it has to come out this way, so that's how it's going to come out. And then people say, well, yeah, you're betting the right way. None of that matters. And that's scary. None of that matters because it's just you. It's you. It's your world. It's your universe. It doesn't have any outcomes. Or rather, it doesn't have any ability for you to control outcomes. It's just a being state. Yes, everyone totted up all the things, and 10 million people went by, and as Margaret said, 999 million of them went one way, and 1 million went the other. No one knows where you go. None of that matters. You're part of, to use a scientific term, you're part of a wave function, and you can end up anywhere. You can end up anywhere, and that's why you can end up anywhere. Because if it was possible that you could determine outcomes, the whole thing, and by the whole thing I mean the complete and utter total universe, collapses. If you can determine an outcome, the universe collapses. The fact that you cannot determine outcomes keeps it going. You can only observe them. You can't determine them. Determination collapses the universe. The universe is held aloft. in one way. It's a giant balloon of uncertainty.
Can you explain in general that particular statement so that people can understand?
Yeah. The best way is rolling dice. If you roll dice, and they've got 6 sides, there is a tremendously good chance that one of the 6 sides is going to turn up. There's always a chance that none of them turn up. It's never 0. Why? Because something could happen. It's possible that the dice could just sit there spinning. It could land on an edge and balance perfectly. The reason that you observe the dice and say, well, it's going to go to one of the 6 sides, is that you're thinking, well, it's only got 6 sides. But it has infinite amounts of sides. Just some of them are very tiny. The tiny ones still happen. And every time you go from one moment of now to the next, the whole universe, as Einstein once famously said, the whole universe is rolling a set of dice with infinite numbers of sides, and anything can happen. If you can determine where the dice will fall on any particular roll, they're not dice anymore. They're static. They're like nailed to the floor. And if you can nail them to the floor, the game is over. The whole universe stops. If you can nail the dice to the floor and say, it's going to be a 6 this time, turn it all off, turn the lights off, it's over. The fact that you can't say what it's going to be keeps the universe afloat. Not better?
The foundation of that being pathways that are produced whenever you're throwing the dice. Okay, so the myriad of pathways is the foundation of life. It is actually life pathways, where the dice is an expression, let's say, of it going one way or the other. But the fact that you are participating in a sea of energy, of life that flows, and it flows in pathways, produces your universe. The universe was set this way so that you, as a conscious being, may traverse the different pathways according to your decisions. The outcome of the decisions are uncertain, but you still get a chance to make the decisions and experience what it means to walk on the path that you have chosen.
Exactly.
So, if that's taken away, and suddenly you no longer have the ability to choose something other than this one thing, because it's always going to happen that way, then that universe of life flow collapses.
And that's truly the wisdom of uncertainty. I'm certain of one thing.
Mm-hmm.
The show's come to an end.
Oh, that was quick.
That was quick. So we survived, and I am still Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret. And thank you for listening.